Hey everyone, Jeremy here. I just wanted to record some audio commentary because I really like how this picture turned out, and I kind of want to explain my process as I was going through it. A lot of the videos that I've done in the past, I just kind of added some background music to, and they're really good to relax and kind of have playing in the background while you're studying. But I kind of want to get into doing videos where I'm kind of explaining the process for people who want to learn. I've noticed a lot of the people on my channel are new artists who are trying to get started. So as this time lapse is going through, I'm just going to kind of explain what I'm working on. So I am working on in watercolor here, and my understanding, I'm not an expert at using watercolor, but I'm trying to learn myself, is that when working with watercolor, because it's transparent, you should really work with your light values going into your dark values. So far, that's kind of what I've been doing. I started with like a really light tan, and then I've added some oranger colors. The picture on the left is what it's going to end up being. The picture on the right is me working on it. As you can see, I'm adding in some reds into the picture because like a horse isn't just one color. There's all these like little colors involved depending on how the light catches it. So as I'm applying these, I didn't start doing this, but I changed to doing it as I was moving along. I'm trying to go with the coat, right? So I'm trying to follow contours in the body. And then of course here I'm just adding in some background. I didn't want the horse to just be on a white like piece of paper. So I started with some blues and I'm mixing in some shadows to those blues. Uh, since I don't work with watercolor a lot, to me this looks super dark. Um, but it does dry a lot more muted. So when I added all this black, I'm like, holy crap, I'm adding a whole bunch of black, like it's black ink or something like that. But it really does dry out a lot lighter. And the here I realized I need to put in the harness. So like I tried to erase some of it, but I don't know. You'll see how it turns out. Yeah, okay. So like I kind of make adjustments there to put that harness back in. Um, but yeah, so I really like how the kind of background clouds worked out. I like the I've done this before, I think, but I start with like a blue and kind of just add some shadow to it. Here I'm adding shadows to the face. As you can see, it's kind of blotchy. I'm not really happy with it, but it dried pretty well. So I don't know. They say trust the process. So this is me trusting the process. But as things dry, I started noticing, well, some of that color, the yellows, kind of got lost, some of the highlights and stuff. So I'm putting those back in. This horse is very pretty in how it catches the light. I like how the highlights work with the dark on the horse. I do live in horse country, so I see a lot of different horses running around. This one was a pretty one, so I definitely wanted to work with it. Um, at some point I realized, well, I need to put in the mane and I need to reinforce some of these shadows. Uh, I'm not happy with that hair that comes behind the ear, but I needed to put that in. And then I realized, well, I'm not going to get very far if I don't actually put in the rest of the harness. So I started putting that in so that I can, kind of work off of that. Uh, Throughout this, you can see that I'm freehanding the image, so I have to put in these anchor points to kind of orientate myself and decide where I'm at. Uh, so that's kind of the reason why I wanted to put in the harness so that I can kind of make mental measurements and see how things are going in terms of like the face structure, things like that. Oftentimes when I do horses, I think I did a good job here, but oftentimes when I do horses, the nose is a little bit short. So I am trying to work on that. So because I'm not familiar with watercolors all that much, I decided to do like an ink outline here. I suppose I could have done this in watercolor and it probably would have worked out as well. But because I'm coming from like a drawing background, I really wanted a lot more control over that. So I came back in. I've got these waterproof inks. It's a really nice set, and the overall effect is it does make it look illustrated, but that's fine because that's what I was going for anyway. I was trying to do an illustration over like a painting. So working with some ink, putting in some some detail on the mane. Um, I'm kind of happy with how that works. Again, theoretically, I could have done this with a very fine brush with like some really dry watercolor black ink, but this works fine too. I like the overall effect. What you see on the left, I think, is a pretty cool illustration. Like I'm pretty proud of it. I would probably make a print out of it or something like that. But uh, yeah, so here I'm going in with some colored pencils. I think that's fine when working with watercolors. I'm going in with colored pencils to kind of put in some of the highlights and some of the color that may have got a little lost in the watercolor. I'm sure somebody with a lot more experience in watercolor could have made short work of, putting in some of these finer details on the color. But for me, it was just easier to come in with colored pencils, and I kind of like that effect. So using watercolor for like large areas of color, and then coming back and maybe adding some detail with colored pencils. I like that process. I'll probably repeat that in the future, especially when dealing with illustrations. I think it creates a really cool effect. Now, the only downside is that the watercolor paper is a cold press watercolor paper with a lot of texture. So working with that texture and colored pencils is a little bit challenging because like you do get that texture when you rub the pencil across the paper. But I think because the watercolor is already there, coming back over it with colored pencils, it doesn't look that weird. Like if I was just drawing on this paper without any watercolor, it would be way too heavily textured. I'd have to blend in the colored pencils a lot. Um, but yeah, I think it's fine. There's some areas in here that probably could use a little more work on dealing with that texture, but otherwise, I think it's fine. Because the colored pencils are opaque, they work really well over watercolor. These are Prismacolor colored pencils, very common colored pencils that people use. They're like wax based. So they do really work well with watercolor. If you wanted to do something similar to this, I highly recommend them. But overall, I like the combination of watercolor, ink, and colored pencils. I guess you wouldn't call this a watercolor painting. It'd be more like a mixed media thing, but you know, you do what you have to do in order to get the effect that you want. The overall effect, I think, is slightly cartoony, definitely like more illustrated than painted, but I kind of like this style. I like if I did more pictures in this style, I don't think I'd be unhappy with that. So some of the pieces of the harness, I kind of wish I put more thought into it. So when I did start doing this picture, I did just kind of want to get the shape of the face in there, and I wanted to get the body in there and kind of decide where all of the different elements were. I kind of wish I spent more time trying to figure out where all of the physical structure of the harness would be. So you've got the straps that are coming across the face. You've got you've got the whatever it's called, the leash, I guess, that comes across for the rider. I'm sure there's a term for it. It escapes me, but I wish I had put more thought into where all of those would be because I'm kind of trying to force fit it back in now. And I think I could have compensated for that a little bit earlier. But again, I think it turned out fine. Particularly that ring on the harness. I didn't want that to be, the wrong size and in the wrong position. I do think that the lines across the face, the straps across the face are a little close to the eyes. I would have moved that if I had the chance, but if you don't deal with horses all that much, like they're not part of your life, you probably wouldn't notice that. Somebody who does deal with horses a lot, they might look at that and be like, I don't know, like that's a little close to the eye. That would be rubbing the horse's eye a lot, and you know, it's fine. I'm very happy with how the picture turned out overall. I do plan to maybe do some more pictures like this in the future. So if you do like this type of style, I encourage you guys to practice on your own. Give it a shot, see if you can do it, and then definitely tune into my channel in the future to see what new pictures I do in this style. I always like to start with horses because I am familiar with horses, living in horse country, Kentucky, in the United States for those of you guys abroad. But so I'm pretty familiar with horses. So whenever I'm trying something new, I do like to work with horses, but expect maybe dogs and people and other things in this style. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll check you back later. Have a good one. Bye.